Give you a little background on myself. I'm a native of Wilmington, Delaware. I got my bachelor's degree in chemistry from the Virginia Military Institute in 1959. They had just discovered carbon in those days, so we only had a periodic table of 40. I don't know if I could come back and do what you all have done or will continue to do. I went to VMI on a football scholarship. Everything was paid for 4 years. I came out with a chemistry degree. Then I taught as an instructor for about a year before going in and discharging my military obligation as a lieutenant in infantry. Nice contrast. Chemistry, infantry.
But in those days, able-bodied men in particular were eligible for the draft. You could offset that by being physically or mentally incapacitated. And some, I think, tried that. Others got deferments for school, as an example. And, or you could join the service yourself, the Army, the Navy, the Marine Corps, and the Air Force. The Army was the one who was doing the drafting. So we had that staring at us, and if as soon as you flunked out of school, you were snapped up by the government in the draft. So there was an added incentive to stay in school and study. After that, I got my PhD from the University of Delaware in organic chemistry, and I had the golden opportunities to work for DuPont Company in their experimental station in Wilmington, Delaware, in their textile fibers department, where as a synthetic organic chemist I was aspiring to be. They aimed me towards making macromolecules in polymers, fibers, plastics, and things of that nature. So at a very early stage, I became very practically oriented by working at the DuPont Company for a total of about 2 years, off and on, summer school. And after graduation, I worked for about 8 months temporarily to accumulate money to support my wife and 3 children to go in the world of academics. My wife was a stay-at-home mom, and she was able to work on what I could bring in. In teaching, you needed all the money you could get. Salaries weren't very strong in those days in particular. After 2 years, I decided that the academic world wasn't for me. I was an assistant professor in chemistry. We had chemistry majors in the neighborhood of 15 to 16 every year. So we had a very strong department and program at VMI at the time. Very unique school. It's the Virginia Military Institute. My eldest son went there, and he would tell friends when they asked him what college you went to, he said, "I don't." "You don't?" "No," he said, "I've been institutionalized in Virginia." And a military school can make you feel institutionalized. So after deciding that the academic world wasn't for me, I rejoined industry in a sense and came with Eastman Kodak in Tennessee. And being a Delawarean, I wasn't real sure where Tennessee was, nor was my wife. Although we were in Virginia, so we had to look through the atlas to figure out where Tennessee was. And so from that time on, working for the Tennessee Eastman Division with Eastman Kodak as a research chemist, and rose to the ranks of a director of emerging technology after having spent 5 years in Japan, working with Indian, Chinese, Japanese, Australian scientists trying to build intellectual property relationships with our group in Tennessee of about 600 in the technology field and with the scientists in those countries. So what I'm doing in a sense is giving you sort of a quick view of the kinds of places chemists can go, and have been. And for those of you who would like to delve into that further, tomorrow at 10 we'll have a half a dozen people with PhDs who are going to tell you about some of the things that they are doing and have done, so that the future for you, your horizon may be broadened, perhaps even made deeper in some respects of the area you're going into. Enough about me. I'd like to know a little something about you all. How many here are postdocs? 3. PhD candidates? Bachelor, masters? So mostly PhDs and some postdocs. Okay. And this is what this talk is primarily going to be oriented towards. My background is industrial, so I worked in the field of career consulting for industry type careers, very, very little in academic. However, I do have colleagues who do the same thing that I do, who are in academia, or who were in academia, and can help you all with your CVs and sorting out the pathways in academia. But then you've got your own universities to draw on, your faculty, and we can talk about that a little later. Before we go, I wanted to point out a couple of things. The career development program that I'm part of, I wanted to point out at acs.org, they have webinars on that I think some of you will find very interesting. One is Immigration for International Scientists. You can sign up for it. It's tomorrow, or is it today? Today's 17th? Is it all day? 17th? And it's today. You may have missed it, but they do have it played back later. So those of you who are interested in international immigration as a scientist, that webinar could be very helpful. It's ACS, it's on the web. Then the status of chem jobs. I think that will be very important for you to listen to the talk. These folks talk about the pharmaceutical industry, the jobs for industrial jobs primarily. And then I've been working with some of you. Michelle was one of my clients I've had online and on the phone with resume reviews, so I'll be happy to do that later with you all, either tomorrow when we have that session, and you can sign up for it, or I can work with you online and on the phone, or I can point you towards a colleague who might be able to help you do that. All volunteers at no cost to members. Resume prep we're doing today. A resume is a marketing tool. It tells demonstrates your match with job requirements, communication that differentiates you from others. It is not a listing of all your skills. It is not a curriculum vitae. Those are a different beast altogether. Much of the same information, but structured quite differently. And it is not a substitute for a job application. It is to get an interview. It's to show people, try to get them to talk to you. It is to screen out applicants who don't fit. We had a gentleman who's on our group of consultants who work for P&G as the PhD recruiter. And he found that he would advertise typically 60 jobs for PhD in the field of chemistry. He got 6,000 applications and resumes. 6,000 for 1 year's job openings. What does that say? It says they read them all because they don't want to miss out on some good candidates. They take probably no more than 20 to 30 seconds to scan them, to screen them. And so we'll be talking about how to make those first 7 seconds in particular the ones that bring you out as, yes, you're applying for a job we have. That's the importance. You're applying for a job or a field that we need help in. Be specific. Cut back on the words. We don't need a lot. You'll see the structure we go through is very, very scientific, very clean and to the point. Don't be creative. Be specific so people don't have to guess what you're talking about. And be extremely careful in how you prepare your resume. Some people will throw out resumes on errors, spelling errors. But there is some flex in there. We're talking about PhD candidates, folks who are coming from other countries, transcending their culture. their language. Some are even like myself coming from Tennessee. We've got to learn how to, get along. So employers will have some flex in there, but make sure you have minimum, and as close to zero as you can, of misspellings or words, inappropriate words. We're going to be talking about the structure, the format and style, cover letter. This is where your voice is heard for the first time rather than reading some resume. You're going to have a chance to have your voice heard as you would maybe conversationally in a cover letter. And then we'll talk about starting and refining your resume. First thing off will be introduction. We talk about heading, job objective, and highlights. And we'll spend a little time on highlights because now we want to talk about what we have done and why we think what we have done is important to you, the reader of the particular industry or company you're applying to. Background, we'll talk that in a minute, and supporting information. Obviously, name, address, email, contact information. Watch your web pages, watch the Facebook, watch the other things on there because they will look at those. They will Google you. If they're seriously looking at you, they'll Google that sort of thing, bring you up, and if you've got things on there you would rather not have an employer know about, get it off. Don't put anything out there you wouldn't want tell your mother or your father because employers look at it like, okay, so this is spring break at Daytona when you were a senior in high school. Okay, that's some time ago. Maybe you've gotten over that. But it does create a bit of a cloud. Phone number, answering machine, and if you room with someone or share quarters with someone, ask them if they're answering the phone that is likely to be an employer. Don't get silly. If you've got an answering machine that's silly, like rock music or something like that, you may want to drop that off for the time being while you look for a job. These folks are busy. They're going to call you, and they may call you at times that you're not prepared to receive them, and the answering machine could be a way of dealing with that. After the resume review, some of you may want to talk about interviewing techniques, and that may be on the phone. That would be one possibility. You'd be amazed at how important it is. You don't get a second chance to make a good first impression. And so interviewing and learning a little bit about that can go a long way to help you and your quest to be a good employee. Job objective. I'm looking for someone who has specific skills. I want to know, are you interested in filling that position? So I'm assuming you know my position or you know the kind of work my company is involved in. It tells me that you know what your qualities will align with the job. It makes me understand. I have gotten a number of resumes in which I have to try and dope out, is this person an analytical chemist? Are they looking for synthetic work? They want to be a croupier at a casino in Las Vegas? I don't know. I've got a mass of information in front of me. I have no idea how that's been sharpened to suit my needs. So this is why an objective is an important thing for me to see. And it alerts readers to your key qualifications. If you're an engineer, if you're a microbiologist, whatever you are, that kind of information can go into your objective. Now, where are you going to get this information? Go online, acs.org, careers. They've got resume prep, much of what I'm talking about here, so it'll be right there in front of you. You don't have to be a member to access it. You can access it off the line, no problem. So go there if you want to get further into detail about some of these things that I'm going over rather quickly. Objective. Join a group to reach new horizons in productivity and growth. Whoa. And is apple pie and mother in there anywhere? Or would you rather join us, watch us crash and burn? That's not a very good objective, obviously. I've seen folks talk about, I want a management position when they haven't managed anything. They haven't even been an entry-level scientist. Don't reach for the stars. The first time I joined Eastman Chemical Division of Kodak, there were 15,000 employees in that division. We had over 600 acres of manufacturing in Tennessee. It's a huge complex, chemical complex. The CEO and division president brought in several hundred of us who were coming in at the time because the chemical industry in the 60s was just climbing the walls, trying to going on with research. And he said, I know everyone out there thinks you're qualified for my job, and therefore you would like to have my job. But look around, there's hundreds of you, there's one of me. So many of you are not going to make this position, and that's not why we hired you. We hired you to solve our problems. Do what we ask you to do the best that you can, the very best way you can get the job done to solve our problems. Look at your desk, or look at your bench, or look at your machine, whatever it is you're doing, and from that, you do well, you get moved up. You don't go in as a manager. I don't care if you've got 3 postdocs and a PhD, and you've got a GPA of 4.7. Doesn't matter. You've got, just like an athlete has to show on the field what they can do, they can't talk their way on it for long before they're dropped out. So pay attention to the detail. That's where the devil is of any kind of job you're looking for. Right way. A position as an organic chemist, ideally could be synthetic organic chemist, if that's what you're interested in. Taking advantage of my knowledge of medicinal chemistry and organic synthesis implied you want to be a synthetic chemist in medicinal chemistry. I hope you're applying to me because I have that kind of a position to open, and you're not applying to Tennessee Eastman that's looking for someone who's going to be a polymer chemist in coatings, because we're not going to be interested. That's not the interest we have in hiring someone. So you've got to narrow the focus down pretty sharply. You've got to do due diligence on your research of the potential employer. 2 to 3 lines max. You want to catch their attention. Remember, the first 7 seconds of the reading is where you want to get their attention. Who you are, what you can bring to us as an objective, and that hits right on our money, what we want. And then from that, you can begin to develop the next level, highlights. Now, many of you will not comprehend what highlights mean because you're just doing a job. I do research is what I do. Now, what highlights do I have? This is where you're going to begin to point out, say, look, I've done this, I can do that. This is the can-do things that you're going to be able to demonstrate later in the resume. That's going to grip me with, oh, they've been in this and that and the other. The kind of things that I want to hire someone to do. It makes explicit some skills or experiences of special note considering the job description. You may be bringing to my job a wealth of information. Say I was a lab head of a coatings and inks research at Eastman. I had, I don't know, a dozen people working for me, polymer chemists, folks that put things together as far as developing formulas and that sort of thing. And I had a clear idea of what it is I would like to have. I spoke to a gentleman from Pittsburgh, PhD, and he was doing distributing in colloidal systems zinc sulfide. And he had to put it electrical chart. This to me is it talks of inks, it talks of coatings, automobile coatings, talks of coatings for LCDs, coatings. Very interested in talking to him. Not that I would hire him because I've been away for a number of years, but I suggested he talk to Eastman. That's the kind of linkage you want to try and build in your work, however you can. How do you do that? How do you know what the company's interested in? Do a patent search. Put keywords from your work. in the patent search. What are you looking for? Names of companies, names of inventors. Now you're going to, and you may have done this already in some of your literature searching, look at the companies that are listed there. Get some names. And out of that, you can network with the researchers, the inventors. I see you've done this. I've found that very interesting in patents now I'm speaking of. And many of them are inventors, and they're the ones that will be named on the patent, and their company or government entity or wherever the employer is. And it helps you to present an entire package. Well, other than just being very narrow, you can now flesh out some of your accomplishments technically and otherwise. Action verbs, experience in synthesis and purification, skilled in identifying and preparing, novel materials. And you may put in 1 or 2 novel materials. And this is what you would do to try and get the attention of the reader that you know is interested in the kind of work that you have. Adept at preparing fuel cells, originated techniques, created, originated, innovated. Proven team leader. Now this gets a little soft for me. And this is something I would focus on if we got down to this point in looking over your resume. Proven team leader with excellent interpersonal and communication skills. You ask someone what is communication in a room this size, you'll get probably twice as many definitions of what communication is to them. After they think, first time they'll say this, second time they think about it, they'll say that. You can get many different definitions of what communication is. And I lived with my wife in 5 years in Japan. Not an easy language to try to come to grips with. Thank God the Japanese and the Chinese were very helpful in switching over to English when they recognized I was trying to speak Japanese. I didn't even try Chinese, but Indian English was not the language of the land, but it certainly was of the technical and scientific community. And I understand what it is to be able to say the words, but trying to comprehend what the words mean is another story. That's communication. Choosing the word at the right time to convey a thought that you're trying to get across. It's not a vocabulary exercise. It's melding together what you're trying to get across with the meaning you want them to get. Along that line, this gentleman from Pittsburgh was a gentleman from China. I was trying to think where, Chengdu, I think. I forget. In any case, I asked him, he said, I was reading his resume as we were talking back and forth on the phone. I said, I see you're good in communication. Now tell me, what do you mean? He said, well, I can do oral presentations. No, I'm talking about talking. Can you get across abstract ideas, opaque thoughts, emotional ideas, and pause? I think so. I'm a TA for teaching in the recitation sections. And I got an award for that because I was recognized. Now, for an American reading that, I'm speaking off now, someone looking over a resume, for an American reading that, someone from another country says communication skills, what does that mean? You can stand in front of a class of American youngsters and talk to them about chemistry and get an award for it. I call you a pretty good communicator. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. I may want to talk to you. And talking to him on the phone was easy. You could see why he would be able to do that. That's why phone conversations are so important. And if we did it together with your resume, that would be sort of like an interview practice, not official, unofficial, and would help you understand some of the questions that I would pose to you about your resume. And you say, well, wait a minute, that's not what I meant. Okay, well, what did you mean? If you say excellent interpersonal and skills, what God's name does that mean? I was elected co-captain of the soccer team. Got you. Your colleagues voted you. Oh, okay. Now we're talking about tying those things together. Don't put it down unless you can defend it, or at least explain it. I don't mean it's not an adversarial thing. You want to be able to explain it to your advantage. Any questions so far? Yes?
You said, just in the second line, you said identify and prepare novel material, and you said you can name several materials. But just like I'm an organic chemist, and all my compounds with a quite long names, do you think I need a long name or just a draw structure?
Yeah, or you could say novel compounds for use in, what are they intended for? Or macromolecules intended for, something that shows the size of the effort that you put into it and where you're aiming it. Now, you wouldn't want to put, no, most of these folks will read it first are human resource people, and you make their heads explode. And me, I would have probably the same problem too, so I don't want to knock on them too hard. Any other questions? Yes,
Is this where you put down, I've seen in some resumes, second languages?
we'll get to that.
Okay.
And I'll talk about that in just a moment. And when I gave you my life story, all the good parts, there's talking about football player and a scholarship. You're asking, that's for folks who are just coming out of school and not having a vast array of accomplishments. Anything you've done that shows you were chosen because you were able to do something not many other people could do, even though it was something like football, that doesn't mean that it's not worth talking about, because it's team play, role play, suffer for the team, win the big one for the team, that sort of thing is you can draw out of those. Highlight section. Here are some of the things you want to consider. We're still back on highlights now. Now you're getting into the meat of the subject. You're talking about yourself. And if you're not as good salesman for yourself, you're going to have a hard time convincing me I should buy into the game you may bring to me, especially if I have other good candidates. Types of skills: technical, business, teamwork, communications, management. Teamwork, you may have worked on a team. Talk about the contribution you made to the team's success or what you were expected to make, and you were on other teams because you were good on that. Analytical chemists oftentimes are added to teams because of their skill sets that are needed. Synthetic organic chemists, not so many maybe. But you may be working with others like analytical chemists or maybe someone from another school. Teamwork. Management. I was a manager of McDonald's. You think that's not something worth mentioning? Oh yeah, it is. You were chosen to lead others. Now, is that something that's equivalent to a CEO? No, but it shows that you were chosen to do something worthwhile. These are the kinds of things you've got to dig out of your past that you probably never reflected on and put a spin on it that says, because I've done this, it's likely I can do that. The easiest thing to determine about what a person will do is to find out what they have done. Not always, but it's a good first cut. How to frame it: a broad knowledge of, experienced in, proficient at, adept at, proven track record. Now, if you've got a track record and you can measure it, ooh, that's good. We'll talk about quantitative and semi-quantitative results that you can talk about. Yes?
When you mentioned other experiences, like, for example, management, being a manager at McDonald's and things like that, how far back in your past should you bring up those?
Well, most of the, let's see, if you're a graduate student, you're in your middle 20s, you may have been a teenager, 18, we're talking about 6-7 years. That's okay. Because you go back to where you've been picked out by competent adults, maybe. Sometimes you got to wonder about the adults. But yes, go back to where you were assigned, you were the lead TA of several TAs, or anything that shows leadership, or you were chosen from a group to do something. Does that get to the answer?
I guess my question was, like, if you did something in high school, like, is it
Yes.
too far back? to
No.
include it on your
No.
resume?
No, it's not substantive. It's not, it may be something good to talk about on the interview. But what it does, it helps individuals develop a sense of You're not a lab rat only. You're good in the lab, but you also recognize there's a life outside, or there was a life outside before you got in graduate school. You're not supposed to have a life outside. And if you do, they would say, what are you doing? Why are you outside? Place is on fire? Okay, talking about introduction, is that okay? Is that heading, highlights, and job objective? Let's go on to background, education, work experience, spend a little time on work experience and other relevant skills, and finish up with supporting information. Now we're just structuring the resume. I'm trying to flesh out the elements of the structure as we go along. Where can you find this structure besides off of here? And your notes, go to the acs.org, careers, and they'll go through this in detail. A lot of this you are very familiar with, list degrees in reverse chronological order, and so forth. List grades only if very high. If it's a PhD, you better have good grades. And if it's a 3.8, anything above a 3.8, okay, but I wouldn't even mention it. This is a research degree. You've passed courses to get to where you are. GPAs don't mean a whole lot at the PhD and certainly at postdoc. I guess there'd be no GPA there necessarily. The kind of research, now this is where I would spend some time as a reader thinking that you might be able to help me in my laboratory. List positions in reverse chronological order. If there are gaps, be ready to explain them. If you've been a postdoc for 4 years, be ready to explain it to an industrial company. Unusual to have that many. If there's gaps because of illness, or you had military service, any number of reasons why a gap can appear in your chronology of experience, be ready to explain it. Separate postdoc and thesis research. Accomplishments. Let's spend some time on that. These are your work experiences. I worked for company ABC in Eastern Tennessee, and I was responsible for this project or that project, or I worked in graduate school and I had the responsibility of doing something, and the context. What actions did you take? What results came out? Just don't list blandly things that you have done without telling me why were you doing it. And it doesn't have to be we're talking about 2 pages here for the whole shooting match. I just need to know what context you were doing. Trying to find a new coating, a new way of dispersing zinc sulfide into coating materials to be used in automotive coatings. We carried out whatever we did, and results where we got a patent. How's that for 1, 2, 3? So try to put the context. Why are you doing it? What did you do? Where are the results? Can you measure the results? Are they weighty? Citations in other literature for papers you've written. That's results. You've made an impact. Your windshield was hit with a rock by people who didn't agree with you. Well, that's a result. It may not be a good one. But in any case, anything that you can measure or allude to that will be able to be defensible as far as a result. Other relevant skills, special techniques that you've developed, equipment that you may have built or learned to build, equipment that you can maintain, can troubleshoot, can operate, rather than just turning it over to a technician who's just NMRs or whatever you're using. I mean, you could, if they turn the lights out, you'd know how to get this thing moving and going. That kind of, anything special like that. Instrumentation, new instruments signify that. Unusual computer programs. If you can't do Word and you can't Google, you're not where you need to be. Anyhow, talk about something that's, way off the top, maybe a new design computer program or a brand new program coming in to show that you're at cutting edge for some of the things coming along. Languages. Language depends on what we're looking for. But if I'm looking for someone to be a research scientist, language is not critical to me. If I was looking for someone to post in a country that language was important, yes. What it does tell me is that you have spent some time examining or being in another culture, that you may have views of things, or you can, diversity may not be a strange, difficult thing for you. If it's a native tongue, yeah, certainly. And this is something I think is important for foreign students who are looking to find work in the United States. Americans seldom live overseas, and as a consequence, many of them have no appreciation for what it takes to come from another country, transcend their culture, and be successful on your own. Hello. They don't grasp that. You can't wear it out. You can't talk about it all the time, but it's something to point out. I showed resilience, toughness, focus if I'm coming from another country trying to be successful. Maybe enough said there. Languages, list them. Only list those that you feel very comfortable with, you're fluent in. You took Spanish in high school. You lived in Mexico for 2 years and you're fluent. Well, no, that's another story. Yes.
Is there a reason to differentiate between technical proficiency in a language and colloquial language?
Conversational.
Right.
Technical proficiency. At
Well,
one time.
like the technical side, like speaking chemistry in a foreign language is a little different
Yeah, that's true.
than speaking with
Yeah.
someone at the bank.
To get a PhD in my day, you had to pass German and French qualifiers because that's where the literature came from. Today, that's not the case. So language is important, but it's not a major building block. Put it in there, it could be conversational, something to generate conversation. It does show a liberal art expansion into another area, appreciation for others in another language.
But it's not worth defining on the resume.
No, no. Unless they specify they want language skills of certain levels. Okay, introduction and background we've sailed through. Awards and publications, presentations, references. Publications and presentations. Publications, peer-reviewed journals. That's what you talk about. Peer-reviewed journals. U.S. patents granted and also applied for. It's good. Presentations, if they're invited, by all means. If your boss was invited to give a talk on your work and he or she says, I'm busy, Super Bowl's on, you go give the talk. You're invited. Make mention of that. Anything that shows that someone is very interested in your work to bring you in front of them, however that goes. Beyond that, the value drops because presentations are not peer-reviewed. We want to know what people think about your work. Giving a talk at the ACS or giving a talk at a seminar here or elsewhere shows that you've had some experience doing that, but it doesn't say much beyond that. You're not in demand in that regard. Awards. Granting organization, effort acknowledged. I talked to a number of folks, especially from China, that get awards for top student at Tsinghua University in Shanghai. What does that mean? Well, it means there were 10,000 students who were eligible, and I was the top third of that. Oh, okay. That's what it means. Give them some sense of the weight of what you have done. How many were eligible? The name doesn't mean anything. What it amounts to does. Professional organizations, non-scientific activities. Here's something I would say. Paid my way through school playing football. I had a young lady who won the third tier of NCAA record in gymnastics. Well, hello. she was top in her class in that particular field in a number of schools. Well, what's gymnastics mean? Day in, day out work, injuries, working against pain, dedication, all that. Do you make a big deal out of it? No, but mention it, certainly. Question?
So do you think listing something like that on your resume could potentially raise the red flag? You spend a lot of time doing other things?
Well, it depends on what you say. I'm an expert bass fisherman, so I fish out in the morning and come in late, that kind of thing, but
Using that gymnastics example?
no, if you, well, say like playing football and getting a degree in chemistry in 4 years. Accomplishment, yeah. Now, it depends on how you can work it in there. If it's going to be detrimental, no, don't mention it. But if you, say you worked your way through school, paid for it by working at such and such, or interned, or whatever, anything that shows diligence, initiative, willingness to work, focus on your goals are good. And the goals don't have to be necessarily industrial or scientific. Any questions? Okay. References. I like them. I like to see them, especially people who are just coming out of the chute as fresh PhDs or postdocs. Because I like to be able to call them up and say, this person really exists? And what do you think of them? And I may know them, or somebody on my staff may know the reference and trust the reference. And that's a good reference to have. If you have someone that can tie into a job, but you got to clear it with them. Don't assume, because they had you over for a beer bash every semester, that they were going to give you a good reference. Make sure they will give you a reference that you can help you. Such things as great worker when they're here. Oh, very, very affable, outgoing, and is part of the bridge club. Wait a minute, we're talking about a reference here for technical. That's sort of a backhanded compliment. And some people will do that to say this person's got some issues with work ethic. They don't have the old work ethic in there, die at the bench attitude. You may not have it, but you don't want anybody telling them that you don't have it. Because eventually you'll learn that you'll need it when you get to work in graduate school or elsewhere in industry. So get references, talk to them, say, are you willing to do it? Tell them what you're going to do. Give them your resume. Here's what I'm saying about myself. So they'll clue. I mean, they may have dozens of people who have asked them for references. Give them some way of separating you out of the group, especially if it's an associated faculty member or a teacher from high school or college that you want to talk to. Bring them up to date. Let them know about you. Because they may get a phone call and they're going to say, who? Oh, yeah. I don't remember. Well, if you help them. And also keep them up to date on what you're doing. At each year, after the turn of the new year, I would write a letter to about 8 people who I could identify what they did for me specifically to get me through the door into another area. Coaches, high school teachers, college teachers, bosses on a job, people who helped you, and you can reflect back on. I mean, you got your parents, hello, well, that goes without saying, and you probably thank them plenty. Not that you shouldn't stop, but go through and pick these folks out and specify what they did for you. Thanks to you and your coaching, I got a chance to go free to college. Thank you very much. I now have a PhD. I'm working for Eastman Kodak. I'm doing this. And what reward is that to them? Probably 3 days smiling, thinking about great to have somebody that I touched that really worked out for me. And teachers, that's about all they get. I mean, they're not in it for the money, that's for sure. So anyone can write back and tell them about that. Thank them specifically. I had a professor at college who encouraged me to go to graduate school, set me up to go to the University of Maryland, a colleague of his there. That's gold. They cared enough about me to push me out there. So think about them. Visit the references. As I said, strong advocates. Leave a copy of your resumes. We'll talk about the portfolio. Any questions?
How many
Yes.
references should you have?
3.
3?
I would suggest 3.
I've always heard that you do not list references.
You here don't list references. If you're uncomfortable, that's okay.
Okay, so there, when you had there, don't put down, don't list references.
Yeah.
That's not a hard rule.
No, this is an art form.
Okay.
And you'll have 3 consultants up here and they'll change their
So
minds
it's more
right in the middle of
case,
it.
If you really know the position you're applying for, list the references.
Yes, because they can be specific. Yes.
What about references that may have been in your peer group at one point? So like a graduate student that might have been a couple years ahead of you, but they're now a professor, does that matter, or?
No creds,
Sorry?
no credibility. You have to have credibility as a reference. Someone that has the purview, the view, the global, that sort of thing. I would stay away from someone was a peer and went on.
So if they get like a professor job, it's like, oh, they're still a professor, or, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but your relationship wasn't a performance-related relationship.
Okay.
And that's what you're looking for. Someone who can judge your performance. Someone who's had you in harness somehow, or has seen you in harness and done well. Someone of a level, a peerage level that can say, yes, I recognize that person as being a very good chemist, a strong intellectual, creative, that sort of thing. Now, this is it's not a feel-good thing. It's something that can be analyzed. I had a gentleman that came to work for me. He was recommended by one of the top managers in our company from his alma mater because they'd drawn some others from that school. And I talked with the professor, and he was less than candid with me. Disaster. And I could sense there was something wrong. I couldn't get it out in dealing with the candidate. Got a lot of smoke and mirrors from him. But it was he was in a political machine. That happens. That can't be helped. But I was desperate to find someone who could give me a clear idea of what I thought was going on. And the professor wouldn't do it. Because he knew it would be a death knell for him. That's not candid. That's not a good reference. But you got to be careful. Make sure the person's going to be a strong advocate for you. Because he could have said to me, that, yes, he's doing this and that, which I suspected. And I would have said, withdraw the offer. Couldn't get him to say it. So that was another story. What not to include? Your age. That can be deduced and I graduate in 1959, a bachelor's degree. I am not 38 years old, at least. Marital status, number of children, any kind of affiliation, party, religious, otherwise. National origin, visa status, unless you're a green card holder, permanent resident, or you're a citizen. And I say citizen because if you have a name that is not Johnson, O'Neill, Smith, Americans will look at it like, is this person an American? Is it a citizen? Put in there if there's any question. I had a young lady who had a name, she had a given name that was from, she was Lithuanian extraction, she was an American. And she had a Lithuanian first and second name. It was incomprehensible to me. It had all kinds of consonants in it. And I thought, well, I'm looking at someone who's just got off the, come from Lithuania. No. And she was worried that she wasn't getting job interviews because people didn't think she was an American citizen. Whether she was or not, I don't know. She said there is a colleague of mine who has almost identical resume, and is getting those, getting job interviews. So be careful if you can, if there's any reason to clarify national origin, citizenship, do it. If you got F1, HB, no, don't mention it. Don't put it on your resume. They talk to you on the phone. Now, that's when it comes out. Now you've got them interested in you. They understand that if you're not an American citizen, they've got to go through hoops to get you in here to work. That's not being devious. That's just waiting until they recognize that you've got the skill sets they might want. Yes.
How would you suggest including like your visa status in your resume?
Your what?
Like your visa status in your resume?
If you have a permanent resident, you put that right at the top.
Like after your name or something?
Right in the very beginning, so there's no question. If it's permanent or a citizen. Yeah. Hobbies, don't mention those unless there's something that really reflects an unusual skill. People who are, for instance, I've had a number of students who are in orchestras or symphony orchestras or classical musicians, and or are musicians. So what? Well, what does that tell you? Teamwork, dedication, practice, high degree of capability. Is that a hobby? Yes, and I do that because I enjoy being a part of an orchestra. I am a team player. I know how to fit into a role. I know what the overall music will sound like if I do a good job. That's great stuff. Is it something that's going to turn the world on? No, but it does demonstrate to your reader, I am someone who has done something other than flick switches, heat up things on a hot plate. I've done other things and have been recognized for it by being in whatever barbershop quartet. Anything that shows your collegiality, working towards a goal, getting things done that you couldn't, beyond what you do in your technical area. They're the most important. Sure.
When you mentioned don't include the religion or party affiliation, is that something to avoid?
Yes.
If you had a leadership position in one of those organizations, you would not mention that?
Two-edged sword. Two-edged sword. I'm the leader of a group of, I'll say, Democrats or Republicans or whatever. That leaks over into other areas that people just don't need to know. Because what it does is begins to, opinions are being formed about who you are. And what you're trying to do is show I am a technical person, I am capable of doing things, and what I do in my political, religious, and otherwise life, as long as it's not felonious or spend time in jail, and some of you may have had that, be ready to answer it if you have, or have run-ins with the law. DUIs, that sort of thing, be ready to deal with those. You don't want to, unless you really feel comfortable doing it. Sometimes those kinds of things are better not said on paper. You might come out and when you sense where the interviewer is coming from. You want to try and avoid someone putting a label on you that is not a label that's relative to your work. And if you can do that, I think you're going to be well advised. Keep that for the interview at the time. Let's go on to the portfolio. One page, they say never more than two. Not necessarily. We're talking about formatting the resume. I had a guy come in to me at one of the ACS meetings, I think it was in Boston. He laid on my desk his resume, it was 7 pages. Whoa. I said, have you had a resume review? I have. I want another one. Do you? I said, have you had this out circulating? He said, yes. Have you any luck? He said, I've had 5 interviews. So I picked it up and handed it to him. I said, why are you in here? Your resume's working. What's it intended to do? Get interviews for you. So, We're giving you guidelines. If you're not comfortable with the way these guidelines read, it's you, it's your marketing tool, you put it out there. Feel free to do so. No one's going to, you're not going to get a D. You're not going to repeat the course. If you're comfortable with more than what we suggest, have at it. But remember, resume readers are looking at 30 seconds. So the more you have, maybe the less you'll be able to get that across. Stick to one font, black on white. And if you notice, my slides are black on white. I had a senior vice president tell me when he came to Japan, by God, I don't ever want to see a blue-black background with blue lettering, dark blue lettering. If you do, I'm going to scream. I want to be able to get the information across to me, and this is what I want to see. And that's been a rule I followed. Black on white is simple, it's readable, it's to the point. You don't have people in the background trying to look at it, is that an F, is that a J? If you can't read it like this, then you're in serious trouble. But that's what I keep it black on white. I think it keeps it simple. The old KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid. Use design elements, bullets, bolding, so forth. And be consistent. And I have one of my talks tomorrow. One of my colleagues pointed out I wasn't consistent in the way I put the PowerPoint together. And he was specific. And I thought, yeah, I should have been. Keywords. Don't put in columns, decorative break lines, underlining or shadowing, italics. I'm going to have to stop there because I think we've got the next wave coming in. Any questions? Anyone have a resume that's been out that has generated interview? Have you? And who did you interview?
Did you say who?
Who? Yeah, who interviewed you?
It was actually the recruiter.
The recruiter
So
came.
they were sifting through the first batch.
Were they?
Yeah.
Okay. So you were called for an interview in that regard?
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else had any luck that way? How many here are looking for academic jobs? One?
It's okay, don't be shy, it's not a bad thing.
No, it's, we won't take your name. If you're looking for what I was looking for, if you have an academic job, CVs would be the things that I can help you with identifying other consultants. And in my write-up for the program, I had my email. I worked with a number of you, I'm sure, already. And I'll continue to work with you if you want to by phone and online. Or if you come to the meeting in Anaheim, I'll be there as part of our career services. Okay?
Awesome, George. Thank you so much.